And we're live. Oh, you wandered off.
I
What's that?
didn't
There you
wander
are.
off.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, Cameron, you're coming in a little hot. Let me turn your mic down. All right. So, we should have done this before we got on, but frankly, today's show topic was your idea, brother. So why don't you intro it?
Well, long story short, um, I have been wondering why blue state governors in particular are so keen on staying closed and why red state governors, to some degree, have said maybe we should reopen, maybe not. There are, of course, some exceptions like Colorado, but when you look at Michigan or New York, and they keep talking about extending the lockdown and extending the lockdown. It's like, well, why would you do that? I mean, your economy is going to collapse, and that's when it was like, maybe that's the point. And I say that that's the point because basically there's going to be some type of bailout that happens. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's probably going to happen. So if you're just a real Machiavellian son of a bitch and you're willing to really game the system, you extend your lockdown so that you have even more fiscal crisis, so that you can ask for even more bailout money, so that you can fund a whole bunch of the other uh, blue projects that blue state governors want to fund, you know. And this is something that I've thought for a while, and then Governor Nipple Ring just went and done confirmed it for me. You got that quote over there, buddy?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Governor says medical workers who voluntarily travel to New York must pay state income tax. That's a great picture for the what? Fucking crook. Anyway, um, he said so. Healthcare workers travel from across the country to volunteer to help fight New York's coronavirus outbreak. This is from the Daily Caller, by the way. I'll drop the link to this article in the description so y'all can see that. Feel free to go peruse the article in more depth at your leisure. Uh, there you go. It's down there in the description now. In a Tuesday news conference, Cuomo said the state isn't in a position to provide any subsidies right now because we have a $13 billion deficit. Oh, wait, what? Healthcare workers that traveled from across the country to volunteer to help fight New York's coronavirus outbreak will have to pay state taxes, says Governor Cuomo. So there's a lot of good things I'd like to do. This is Cuomo speaking again. So there's a lot of good things I'd like to do, and if we get federal funding, we can do, but it would be irresponsible for me to sit here looking at a $13 billion deficit and say I'm going to spend more money when I can't even pay the essential services. Um,
And that's the
he
money
says,
shot right
I'm going
there.
to spend more money. And we'll come back to the real money shot in just a second, but this right here really sticks in my craw. I'm going to spend more money. Nobody's asking you to spend money, Governor. They're asking you not to point a gun at the doctors and nurses that came to save your state from the embarrassing failure of, oh, wait, not only did you not close the subways in New York, you just started cleaning them yesterday.
And not only that, but you want to talk about just terrible mistakes that were made in New York. You'd be confirmed to have coronavirus,
And sent directly back to the nursing home?
and then they'd send you back to the nursing home. Like,
Oh my
what?
God.
Why? Why?
We've identified that this fish is actually a stick of dynamite, so we're going to put it back in the barrel.
I mean, an epidemiologist, I am not, but I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that if you take somebody who's sick and you put them in a confined area with a whole bunch of immunocompromised people, those other immunocompromised people will probably get sick. And this is important
Oh,
too,
and die.
because, yeah, and die. Like here in the state of Georgia, we're sitting at around 1,300 deaths. Well, a little more than 600 of those deaths have been outside of nursing homes, which means a little better than 50% of all deaths in the state of Georgia from the coronavirus have come from nursing homes. It's not that I want people in nursing homes to die. That's not the point. But the point is, it's supremely stupid to do what's done, to do what was done, rather. And now, and I realize that, this is not exact one-to-one correlation from Georgia to New York, but I wouldn't be surprised if the math is not at least similar. So they mismanaged this to hell and back. Like leaving the subways open, like, duh. I wonder how come so many people in New York City in particular got sick. And then they would take sick people and send them to nursing homes. And now, because most doctors and nurses are the type of people that want to be doctors and nurses, said, gosh, they might have a problem in New York. You know what? I'm just going to go to New York and help and worry about all that other stuff later. And now all that other stuff that they're going to have to worry about later is going to include having to file taxes in New York. Good God, talk about no good deed going unpunished. Like, it's not spending money. It you said it before the show. That's one of the biggest differences between how the left thinks about economics and how the right thinks about economics. The right tends to think of taxes as theft or confiscation, somewhere in those terms. It's my money, and then the government takes some of it. Whereas the left really seems to view it in the inverse, that the government has a budget, and it's the duty of us little plebeian citizens to fill those coffers up.
Oh no. That's not how the left views it. The left is they are actually communists. The way that they view it is that you don't have any wealth, you don't own anything. What you don't have confiscated at gunpoint under threat of murder by the state is just the amount of the government's money that you're allowed to use.
Yes, how much of it you're allowed to keep. I have heard it put that way.
Not allowed to keep, allowed to use. There's an important distinction here. You are only allowed to keep what is yours. They don't view that any of it was ever yours. They're allowing you to use something that is theirs.
So yeah, and now Governor Cuomo, and I mean, I've got to give him credit just for having the sheer balls to come right out and say it and do it. You think he's auditioning to replace Joe Biden? Maybe.
You mean the barbells?
Yeah, yeah.
Got them big old.
Governor nipple rings. Yeah.
Excuse me, Governor, what's your opinion on the taxation of healthcare workers? Well, if I had.
But yeah, and so now one of the things that he's holding hostage is this is one of those things where I bet even a lot of left wing people, if they heard, oh yeah, we're totally going to tax all those doctors and nurses that traveled to New York to help out. And even a lot of left wing people would be like, well, wait a minute, hold on. They don't actually live in New York. They don't even normally work in New York. They went during a crisis to the biggest hotspot in the country to help. And now they're going to have to pay taxes unless you get federal bailout money. Like it's a ballsy strategy on his part because I mean he says it right there. But if we can get federal money, if we can get federal money, I'm reminded of the, Trump's big tax reform. And one of the things that he did in his tax reform was capping the amount of your state's income taxes and such that you could write off on your federal taxes. And this was one of those things that I was kind of aware of existed, but I didn't actually understand the scope of it until all this happened with the tax reform. Um, Basically, there were a lot of red states that were subsidizing blue states because, New York, for example, has got a huge tax burden. You can easily give up 50% of your income, even more in New York, to paying, county taxes, city taxes, property taxes, income taxes, all of it. And then you can turn around and you can write it off on your federal taxes, which means, gosh, states that have got lower tax burdens are actually going to pay more in taxes, even though that shouldn't make sense to the federal government itself. And then Trump cuts that off, and he doesn't even cut it off. He just caps it. That's all he
Yeah,
does
so
is he caps it.
basically what's happening is if you live in one of the better states, like Texas, where there's not a state income tax, um, what's happening is instead of the tax money that comes out, good God, it's all taxes are an unnecessary evil. Let me just be real clear about this before we get any further. Every dollar of tax that gets spent to provide a service costs $5 at least in administrative fees just to spend that dollar. Okay, so every red cent that is stolen from an American citizen in tax money at gunpoint, under threat of murder by the state, is stolen to be wasted. There is nothing, not one thing that is or can be done by the government which is not currently being done and done better by private industry. That statement is without exception.
Yeah, FedEx versus the
Nothing
post
that is
office.
being done by the government is not also being done better by private industry. And I will take that statement one step further. There is nothing that the government, any government, there is nothing that the government has or can do well.
Except waste. They're really good at that. No, but this is kind of a fascinating backdoor to get around what Trump did in capping the amount that they can write off on their state taxes versus their federal taxes. Now they're just going to go straight to the federal government and get the money back. And they're going to go, well, what? I mean, do you want my entire state's economy to collapse? Uh, I mean, you don't want that, do you? It happens to be a re-election year, Mr. President. Do you really want millions of people to go broke and go out of work? And do you really want all these pensions to not get paid? And just gosh, I mean, it's brutal, and I see right through it because that's what this is going to amount to. If there's any pushback on the federal level, let's say Rand Paul, for example, says, no, wait a minute, I'm from Kentucky. Why does Kentucky have to bail out New York? There's a reason why the states have different policies from state to state. And it is so that if New York screws something up, it doesn't have to negatively impact Kentucky. Only now that's what we're going to do. And that's going to make Rand Paul a bad guy, or, the orange man. whomever pushes back against this. But yeah, that is my whole theory in a nutshell. They're deliberately extending and expanding the economic pain that this is causing, so that when the bailout money comes around, they can ask for more, so that they can plug even more holes in their little socialist systems.
And let's not forget the systems that we're talking about. Um, Ch- Good old Chunk Uyghur of the Young Turks Genocide Deniers Club. They Chunk put out a tweet. Let's see. Chunk put where is it? Damn, I
You
thought
want
I
to talk
pulled it
about
up.
opposite land?
Yeah, I did. There it is. Chunk Uyghur put out a tweet. It's a little bit down here. If we had a Democrat with balls when we take over, they'd cut off funding to red states and make them beg for their handout. Almost all of them are welfare queens who live off the blue states. Republican-run states are on average miserable failures who take more from federal government.
He's conflating a whole bunch of statistics there.
And incorrectly. The
The dead air.
yeah, I know. Debt by state, World Population Review. The states with the debt. Okay. Here's World Population Review. Let's look at that one. Let's see. The red states: Texas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Arizona. Oh, I see. Between right around $2,000. They're just around or just under $2,000 per capita debt, right? Georgia. Now, which is especially interesting. So you got $28 million in state debt in Florida, $13 million here in Georgia. Texas has a total state debt of $50 million per capita at $1,700. Oh, what's that, California? $152 million in state debt?
What's that per capita?
Almost $4,000.
Hmm.
So, once again, Chunk, who is subsidizing whom?
Well, he's deliberately including all sorts of welfare statistics and social security statistics into that figure, and kind of brushing over the nuance of what it all actually
Well, and
means.
simultaneously trying to pretend like there's not a huge draw against the welfare state by the criminal aliens that inhabit his precious sanctuary cities. It's completely disingenuous and an absolute lie. But I mean, it's Chunky Uyghur. We know the man has built his empire on lies. The Armenian genocide denial, the uh, rules for thee but not for me. He's super pro union until a union pops up at the Young Turks Network and he shut that shit down, fired a bunch of people. Now I'm not a pro union guy, but let's be real. Chunk is publicly a pro union guy, but not in his house, no sir.
No, 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 no. Well, not only that, but I mean, if you go back and you look at some of his older comments, I mean, he's basically the kind of guy that's okay with saying, "Get back in the kitchen and knit me a sweater." I mean, until, it's time to talk about how evil Donald Trump is, then all of a
I don't
sudden
I
he's.
don't think Chink's a misogynist. I think he's a rapist. You know, as far as moral constitution goes.
The point is that his hypocrisy knows no bounds, which is not that odd considering that he, champions himself on all these left-wing
Oh yeah.
causes.
The left is hypocrisy. that's what they are by definition. I got a whole thing coming out about that in the near future. All right, that's all I've got this morning. Is there anything, do you have any more closing arguments, as it were?
Oh, no, not really, except for look for it in the future. It will happen. Somebody will ask the question, why does Kentucky need to bail out New York? Or some version of that. And then the person asking that question will be vilified. If the
Yeah, oh yeah,
bailout
they'll be
money
a white
doesn't.
supremacist.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I got. Sorry, no Totar Win, but this is something that's been kicking around in my brain for a while. And as soon as I heard Governor Nipplering make this statement, I was like, Chris, can we left turn? And instead of doing a Totar Win, we talk about my theory. And he said, yeah, Cameron, let's do that.
Yep. All right, kiddos, y'all be safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, brother.
All right, man. I'm going to